I'm Victoria Murray, 28 years old, and I've spent my life being the family's punching bag. At our annual gathering in East Hampton, my sister leaned across the dinner table, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're not getting a single dollar, Victoria." My parents nodded their faces stone cold like I was some failed experiment. Everyone laughed except me. I wasn't surprised, though. I'd been building something in secret, something huge. My company HealthSync was about to change everything. Then my phone rang right there at the table. My assistant's voice blasted through. "Ms. Murray, SoftBank just wired $50 million. You're now officially a $150 million CEO. The room froze. Forks dropped. My sister's smug grin vanished. They thought I was nothing. They were wrong. Want to know how I turn the tables on my family? Hit that subscribe button and stick around for the full story. Growing up in the Murray family was like living in a pressure cooker. My father, Philip Murray, and my mother, Joan Murray, built a fortune in New York's finance world, hedge funds, stock portfolios, the works. They owned a townhouse on the Upper East Side, a yacht docked at the Hamptons, and enough clout to get invited to every high society gala. Their pride and joy was my sister Courtney Murray, a 32-year-old finance whiz who could charm a room and crunch numbers like a machine. She was their golden child, the one they paraded at charity events and boardroom dinners. Me, I was the odd one out, the 28-year-old who didn't fit their mold. From as far back as I can remember, Courtney and I were never close. She had this way of looking at me like I was a stray dog who'd wandered into her perfect world. When I was 12, I built a model of a heart monitor for a science fair. It won first place, but at dinner, Courtney smirked and said, "Cute toy, but it's not like you're saving lives." My parents chuckled, and my mother said, "Honey, focus on something practical like Courtney's internships." That stung, but it wasn't new. Every time I mentioned my passion for medical technology, they'd roll their eyes or change the subject. My father once told me, "Finance is legacy, Victoria. Your gadgets won't keep the family name alive." By high school, I was used to it. Courtney was off at Wharton racking up accolades while I was geeking out over biology and coding at my private school in Manhattan. I'd spend hours sketching designs for devices that could help people with chronic illnesses. One night, I showed my parents a prototype for a blood sugar tracker I'd coded on my laptop. My mother glanced at it, then said, "That's nice, but Courtney just landed a deal with Goldman Sachs. That's real success." My father nodded, not even looking up from his phone. I stopped showing them my work after that. The worst part wasn't their words, it was their silence. At family dinners, they'd gush over Courtney's latest deal or her glossy magazine features. I'd try to chime in, maybe mention a breakthrough I'd read about in medical tech, but they'd just nod politely and move on. Courtney would lean back smirking like she'd already won some game I didn't know we were playing. Once at a holiday party, a family friend asked what I did. Before I could answer, Courtney cut in. "Oh, Victoria's just tinkering with her little tech projects." Everyone laughed. I forced a smile, but inside I was burning. Aunt Esther, my mother's younger sister, was the only one who didn't treat me like an afterthought. At 55, she was a retired nurse who'd seen enough of the world to know what mattered. She'd pull me aside at those stuffy gatherings and say, "Keep going, kid. They don't get it, but you're onto something." Her words kept me sane. She'd tell me stories about patients who struggled with diabetes, how a device like the one I dreamed of could have changed their lives. That fueled me more than anything. By the time I left for Stanford, I'd learned to tune out the noise. My family thought I was chasing a pipe dream, but I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for the people who needed what I could build. Still, every phone call home was a reminder of how little they thought of me. My mother would ask, "When are you going to get a real job?" My father would say, "Courtney's running circles around you, step it up." And Courtney. She'd just send me links to her Forbes interviews, no comment needed. Looking back, those years of being sidelined built a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for my company, I was fighting to prove I wasn't invisible. Leaving for Stanford in 2015 was my escape hatch. At 18, I was done with the Murray family's judgment, ready to carve my own path. I majored in biomedical engineering, diving headfirst into a world of circuits code and human physiology. My professors saw something in me, a spark maybe, and I graduated in 2019 with a 4.0 GPA, top of my class. But when I called home to share the news, my mother's response was a distracted, "That's nice, honey. Did you see Courtney's feature in the Wall Street Journal?" My father didn't even pick up. Courtney sent me a text. "Congrats, I guess. Don't expect a parade." I didn't. I was used to their indifference by then. After graduation, I stayed in Silicon Valley. The tech scene was electric, startups popping up, ideas colliding, people betting big on the future. I wanted in. My dream was to build something that could change lives, not just bank accounts. I'd been obsessed with diabetes management since Aunt Esther told me about her patients struggling with clunky monitors and endless doctor visits. So I started sketching out HealthSync, a device that used AI to track blood sugar in real time and sync it with a patient's phone. It wasn't just a gadget, it was a lifeline for people who felt trapped by their condition. By 2020, I was all in. I rented a tiny apartment in Palo Alto, lived off instant noodles, and poured every cent of my savings into HealthSync. I coded late into the night, taught myself machine learning, and cold-called engineers to join me. Most hung up, but a few believed in the vision. My first hire was a brilliant data scientist who'd worked at Google. We built a prototype in 6 months, a sleek device that could predict blood sugar spikes before they happened. When we tested it with a local clinic, patients cried tears of relief. That's when I knew we were onto something real. I called home once, hoping maybe they'd care. My mother answered, half listening. "Sounds risky," she said. "Courtney just closed a $10 million deal. Why don't you try finance?" I hung up fuming. Courtney's deals were their benchmark for success. My work was just cute. My father emailed me a week later, "Focus on something stable, Victoria. You're not Courtney." No kidding, Dad. I didn't want to be. The next year was brutal. I pitched to dozens of investors, facing rejection after rejection. Too niche, they'd say, or medical tech's a tough sell. But I kept going. Aunt Esther sent me $5,000 from her savings, her way of saying she believed in me. That money bought us a second prototype. By 2022, HealthSync had a small but loyal user base, and we caught the eye of a venture capital firm. They invested $2 million, enough to hire a team and scale up testing. Patients were calling it a game changer. Doctors were calling me for demos. Still, when I emailed my parents a link to a TechCrunch article about us, they didn't reply. Courtney did, though, a snarky, "Hope you're not in over your head." By 2024, HealthSync was gaining traction. We partnered with a major hospital network in California, and our user base grew to 10,000. I was working 18-hour days, troubleshooting, code, meeting with regulators, and pitching to bigger investors. My team became my family, people who saw the same future I did. One night, I got a call from a SoftBank executive. They'd been watching us crunching the numbers. "We're interested," they said. "Let's talk serious money." I didn't tell my parents or Courtney. They'd never asked about HealthSync, so why would they care now? Looking back, those years were my proving ground. Every rejection, every late night, every snide comment from Courtney or dismissive sigh from my parents pushed me harder. I wasn't just building a company, I was building myself. HealthSync wasn't about fame or money. It was about giving people control over their lives. But deep down, I knew the East Hampton meeting would be my chance to show my family they'd underestimated me. Not for their approval, but for mine. The summer of 2025 was supposed to be just another Murray family gathering, but it felt like walking into a lion's den. I'd flown in from California for the annual meeting at our family's East Hampton estate. The agenda was clear. My parents were divvying up their fortune, and I knew I was in for a fight. I sat at the polished mahogany table, my stomach in knots, as my father cleared his throat to start the discussion. My mother sat beside him, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on some invisible point. Courtney lounged across from me, sipping wine, her smirk already telling me she was ready to gloat. My father didn't waste time. "We've decided how to divide the estate." He said, his voice clipped like he was addressing a boardroom. "Courtney's proven herself. She's built a name in finance, a legacy we can trust. You, Victoria, haven't shown that kind of stability." My mother nodded, her lips pursed. "Your tech projects are a gamble," she added. "We can't risk the family's wealth on that." The words hit like a slap, but I held my ground, my jaw tight. I'd spent years building HealthSync, pouring my soul into it, and they were dismissing it like it was a hobby. Courtney leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "Let's be real, Victoria. You're not cut out for this. Stick to your little gadgets." Her laugh was sharp like a blade, and a few cousins around the table chuckled along. I felt my face burn, but I didn't flinch. Aunt Esther, sitting quietly at the end, gave me a small nod, her way of saying, "Don't let them break you." I clung to that, but the room felt like it was closing in. My parents' decision wasn't just about money, it was a public declaration that I was less than Courtney, less than their expectations. I tried to speak up. "HealthSync isn't a gamble," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's helping thousands of people already. We're saving lives." My father cut me off. "Numbers don't lie, Victoria. Courtney's firm manages billions. What's your company worth?" "A few thousand," Courtney snorted, swirling her wine. "Exactly. You're playing with toys while I'm running the show." My mother chimed in. "We're proud of Courtney's achievements. You need to find your own path, honey." The condescension in her tone made my blood boil. They hadn't even asked about HealthSync, hadn't read the articles I'd sent, hadn't cared enough to look. The conversation shifted to logistics, trust funds, properties, shares. My parents outlined Courtney's inheritance, the Manhattan townhouse, a stake in their hedge fund, the yacht. I was left with nothing but a vague promise of future considerations if I proved myself. I sat there silent as Courtney gloated, tossing out ideas for redecorating the townhouse she'd soon own. My cousins nodded along, eager to stay in her good graces. Aunt Esther tried to change the subject, asking about my work, but my mother waved it off. "Let's not get sidetracked," she said. "This is about securing the family's future." I felt like I was shrinking, like every word was designed to erase me. I'd faced rejection before, investors, critics, late nights when nothing worked, but this was different. This was my family, the people who were supposed to believe in me, telling me I wasn't enough. I kept my hands folded, nails digging into my palms to stop myself from exploding. I wanted to scream that HealthSync was real, that it was changing lives, that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. But I knew they wouldn't listen. They never had. As dinner approached, the tension hung heavy. Courtney kept throwing jabs, each one sharper than the last. "Maybe you can sell your gadgets at a flea market," she said, grinning as the table laughed again. My father didn't stop her. My mother just looked away. Aunt Esther reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. "You're bigger than this," she whispered. I nodded, but inside I was breaking. I'd come to East Hampton hoping for a chance to be seen, but all I got was confirmation that I'd never belong. What I didn't know then was that everything was about to change. Dinner was served, but I could barely touch my food. The weight of my parents' decision and Courtney's smug jab sat heavy in my chest. The table buzzed with small talk, cousins joking, my mother praising Courtney's latest deal, my father nodding along like a king approving his heir. I kept my head down, picking at my plate, trying to block out the sting of their words. Aunt Esther caught my eye, her quiet smile urging me to hang on. I was seconds from excusing myself when my phone buzzed on the table. I'd forgotten to silence it, a rookie mistake. All eyes turned to me as the buzzing cut through the chatter. Courtney rolled her eyes, muttering, "Can't even handle a dinner without your toys." I grabbed the phone, intending to mute it, but the caller ID stopped me. Cold Sally Becker, my COO. I hesitated, then answered, keeping my voice low. "Sally, this better be quick," I whispered. Her voice came through loud, too loud, on speaker by accident. Ms. Murray SoftBank just wired $50 million. HealthSync's officially valued at $150 million. You're a CEO on fire. The room went dead silent. My heart stopped. I fumbled to turn off the speaker, but it was too late. Every word had echoed across the table. My father's fork froze mid-air. My mother's wine glass hovered, her mouth slightly open. Courtney's smirk vanished, her face paling like she'd seen a ghost. My cousin stared wide-eyed as if I'd just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. Aunt Esther let out a soft, "Well, I'll be damned," and raised her glass, her eyes sparkling with pride. I cleared my throat, trying to steady myself. "Sorry, that was my team," I said, my voice shaking just a bit. Courtney recovered first, her laugh forced. "What, did you win the lottery or something?" she said, trying to play it off. But her voice cracked, betraying her shock. My father set his fork down, his eyes narrowing. "What's this about $50 million? He asked, his tone sharp like he was interrogating a junior analyst. My mother leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Victoria, what exactly is HealthSync doing?" she asked, as if she'd ever cared before. I took a deep breath, the weight of years of dismissal fueling me. HealthSync builds AI-driven devices to help people manage diabetes, I said. "We just closed a deal with SoftBank. They're backing us because our tech is saving lives. It's valued at $150 million. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. I'd dreamed of this moment, but not like this. Not with my family staring at me like I was a stranger. Courtney scoffed, but it was weak. "That's cute," she said, her voice faltering. "But it's probably a fluke. Tech crashes all the time." My father ignored her, his eyes locked on me. $150 million, he repeated like he couldn't believe it. "And you didn't think to tell us?" I almost laughed. "Tell them they'd never asked." My mother chimed in, her tone softer now, almost calculated. "Honey, this is impressive. Why didn't you share this sooner?" The hypocrisy burned. They'd called my work a gamble hours ago. Aunt Esther cut through the tension. "To Victoria," she said, raising her glass higher, "for proving them all wrong." A few cousins hesitantly raised their glasses, unsure how to react. Courtney's face twisted like she'd swallowed something sour. My father cleared his throat again, his voice measured. "This changes things," he said. "We should discuss how this fits into the family's portfolio." My mother nodded, already scheming. "Yes, we could leverage this for our foundation," she said, as if my work was theirs to claim. I sat there, my phone still warm in my hand, Sally's words ringing in my ears. This was the moment I'd waited for, not their approval, but the chance to stand taller than their doubts. But their sudden interest didn't feel like pride. It felt like opportunism, like they saw me as a new asset to exploit. Courtney's eyes darted between me and my parents, her confidence crumbling. For the first time, I saw her not as the golden child, but as someone scared of losing her throne. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear: I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. The silence after Sally's call didn't last long. As the shock wore off, my family's gears started turning, not with pride, but with calculation. My mother was the first to pivot, her voice suddenly warm like she'd rehearsed it. "Victoria, this is a game changer," she said, setting her wine glass down. "We should sit down and discuss how we can support HealthSync." Support, the word felt like a bad joke. Hours ago, she'd called my work a gamble, and now she was acting like my biggest fan. I didn't respond, just stared at her, letting the hypocrisy sink in. Courtney jumped in next, her tone sharp but laced with a fake smile. "You know, I could feature HealthSync in my next investor pitch," she said, leaning forward like we were suddenly partners. "My firm's got connections, Wall Street, Silicon Valley. I can get your little startup some real exposure." Her words dripped with condescension, as if my company needed her to succeed. I clenched my jaw, remembering every time she'd dismissed my work as a toy or a pipe dream. Now that money was on the table, she wanted a piece of it. My father, ever the strategist, saw dollar signs. This valuation changes the equation, he said, his voice calm but commanding. We should bring HealthSync into the family's investment portfolio. I'll have my team draw up terms to integrate it with our hedge fund. Integrate, he meant control. The man who'd never bothered to ask about my company now wanted to stake a claim. I could see the wheels turning in his head. HealthSync wasn't my achievement to him. It was a new asset for the Murray Empire. Even my cousins, who'd laughed at Courtney's jabs earlier, started chiming in. One suggested a family branding campaign to tie HealthSync to the Murray name. Another asked if I needed strategic advice from their consulting firm. It was like watching vultures circle. They didn't care about the patients using my device or the lives we were saving. They saw a shiny new toy to boost their own egos and bank accounts. Aunt Esther stayed quiet, her eyes fixed on me like she knew what was coming. I let them talk, their voices overlapping with ideas about leveraging my success. My mother mentioned a charity gala where HealthSync could be a headline sponsor, her charity, of course. Courtney doubled down, pitching a joint venture where her firm would guide HealthSync's growth. You're not equipped to handle this kind of money, she said, her smile tight. Let me take the lead. My father nodded, adding, We'll need to review your financials, Victoria. This is too big for you to manage alone. The audacity floored me. They'd ignored me for years, and now they thought they could waltz in and take over. Finally, I'd had enough. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the floor cutting through their chatter. Let me make this clear, I said, my voice steady but cold. HealthSync isn't yours to claim. You didn't believe in me when I was coding in my apartment eating ramen to save money. You didn't care when I sent you articles about our first users or when I begged you to listen. I turned to Courtney. You called my work a flea market project. Now you want to advertise it? No thanks. Her face flushed, but she didn't respond. I looked at my father. And you, I said, you told me to get a real job. HealthSync is my job, my legacy. It's not a line item for your portfolio. My mother tried to interrupt, her voice soft and manipulative. Honey, we're just trying to help. I cut her off. Help? You called it a gamble. You chose Courtney over me every single time. I built this without you, and I'll keep building it without you. The table was quiet now, the air thick with tension. My cousins avoided my gaze, suddenly fascinated by their plates. Courtney's hands gripped her napkin, her knuckles white. My father's jaw tightened like I'd insulted his authority. My mother's smile faltered, but she tried to salvage it. Victoria, we're family. We can work together on this. I shook my head. Family doesn't tear you down for years and then claim your wins. You don't get to rewrite the story now. Aunt Esther finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. You should be proud of her, she said to the table. She did this despite you, not because of you. My parents didn't respond, and Courtney just stared at her wine. I felt a rush of gratitude for Aunt Esther, but also a clarity I'd never had before. These people weren't my allies, they were opportunists, and I was done letting them define me. As I sat back down, I knew this wasn't the end of their scheming, but it was the end of my patience. The air at the dinner table was suffocating, their voices still echoing in my head. My mother's fake warmth, Courtney's scheming pitch, my father's cold calculations. I'd spent my life chasing their approval, but in that moment something snapped. I was done. Done with their games, their conditions, their need to control everything I'd built. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor, and every eye turned to me. For once, I didn't care what they thought. I'm done with this, I said, my voice cutting through the room. You don't get to claim my success now, not after years of telling me I wasn't enough. I built HealthSync for people who needed it, not for you to parade it at your galas or add it to your portfolio. My mother's face tightened, her smile gone. Victoria, don't be dramatic, she said, her tone sharp. We're trying to build something together. I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. Together, you didn't want me in your world until there was money on the table. That's not family, that's business. Courtney leaned back, her arms crossed, trying to look unfazed. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice low. You need us. HealthSync won't survive without our connections. I met her gaze, unflinching. I've survived without you my whole life, Courtney. I don't need your connections. I've got my team, my investors, my vision. HealthSync is mine. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't have a comeback. For once, she looked small. My father tried to take charge, his voice booming. Victoria, sit down. We're not done discussing this. But I was already done. No, Dad, I said, the words sharp on my tongue. You don't get to order me around anymore. You made your choice when you wrote me out of the estate. I'm making mine now. I turned to the rest of the table, cousins, aunts, uncles, all watching like this was some reality show. I'm not your fallback plan or your cash cow. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who never saw me. Aunt Esther's eyes glistened, a proud smile tugging at her lips. She didn't say anything, but her nod was enough. My mother tried one last time, her voice softer, almost pleading. Victoria, you're part of this family. Don't walk away. I shook my head. You stopped being my family when you chose sides. I'm not walking away. I'm choosing myself. With that, I grabbed my phone and my bag, and I walked out. The sound of the heavy door slamming behind me felt final, like a chapter closing. I didn't look back as I left the East Hampton estate. The drive to the airport was a blur, my hands gripping the wheel, my mind racing. I called Sally from the car. We're moving HealthSync, I told her. Seattle. It's a fresh start, away from all this. Sally didn't hesitate. I'm in, she said. The team will follow you anywhere. Her loyalty grounded me, a reminder of the family I'd built, one that believed in me without strings attached. Seattle made sense. It was a tech hub far from the New York finance world that had suffocated me. HealthSync needed room to grow, to focus on our mission without my family's shadow looming over us. By the time I boarded my flight, I'd already emailed our lead investors about the move. They were on board, excited about the new direction. I spent the flight sketching out plans, new hires, expanded R&D partnerships with Seattle's medical research centers. For the first time in years, I felt free, like I was finally running towards something instead of away. Leaving wasn't easy. A part of me ached for the family I'd wanted, the one that cheered you on, not the one that kept score. But I knew staying would mean losing myself to their expectations. Aunt Esther texted me as I landed. You did the right thing, kid. Keep shining. Her words were a lifeline, but they also reminded me of what I was leaving behind. Not just the estate or the money, but the hope that my parents or Courtney would ever see me for who I was. As I stepped off the plane in Seattle, the weight on my chest lifted. HealthSync wasn't just a company, it was my proof that I didn't need their validation to succeed. I was starting over, not because they'd pushed me out, but because I'd chosen to walk away. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it was mine. 6 months after leaving East Hampton, I stood in a Seattle conference room facing a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. HealthSync was no longer just a startup, it was a movement. Today, we were announcing our expansion into Europe, with partnerships lined up in London, Berlin, and Paris to bring our AI-driven diabetes monitors to millions more. Sally stood beside me, her steady presence a reminder of the team that had become my real family. As I stepped up to the podium, I felt a surge of pride, not for proving my old family wrong, but for building something that mattered. Thank you for being here, I began, my voice clear and steady. HealthSync's mission has always been about empowering people to live better lives. Our devices have helped over 50,000 patients manage their diabetes with confidence, and today, we're taking that mission global. We're launching in Europe next quarter, partnering with top hospitals to make real-time health monitoring accessible to all. The room buzzed with questions, but I kept going. This isn't just about tech, it's about hope. It's about giving people control over their health no matter where they are. The reporters ate it up, scribbling notes and firing off questions about our tech, our timeline, our impact. Sally handled the numbers, breaking down our $50 million SoftBank investment and our $150 million valuation with the precision of a seasoned COO. But the moment that hit me hardest was when a young reporter asked, "What inspired you to keep going despite the challenges?" I paused, thinking of the nights I'd doubted myself, the years of my family's dismissal. "The people who need this," I said. Every email from a patient saying Health Sync changed their life, that's what kept me going. After the press conference, I stayed to talk with a group of high school girls invited through a STEM outreach program. They were bright, curious, and a little nervous, clutching notebooks filled with questions about coding and biotech. I saw myself in them, the girl who'd sketched medical devices in her bedroom, ignored by everyone but Aunt Esther. "Don't let anyone tell you your ideas aren't enough," I told them. "You don't need permission to dream big. Learn, build, fail, try again. That's how you make a difference." One girl, barely 16, asked how I dealt with people who didn't believe in me. I smiled. "You prove them wrong by doing the work." The event wrapped up with a flood of emails and calls, investors wanting meetings, hospitals requesting demos, even a tech influencer pitching a podcast. But none were from my parents or Courtney. They'd been trying to reach me since I left East Hampton. Texts, voicemails, even an email from my father's assistant about a family meeting. I didn't respond. My mother sent a message claiming she was proud and wanted to reconnect. Courtney left a voicemail offering to collaborate on a new project, her tone all business, no apology. I deleted them all. Aunt Esther was the only one I replied to, thanking her for her support. Her response was simple: "Keep leading, kid." Settling into Seattle felt like breathing for the first time. HealthSync's new headquarters was a hub of energy engineers tweaking algorithms, designers refining prototypes, and patient advocates sharing stories that fueled our mission. We were already planning our next device, one that could track more than just blood sugar. I spent my days in meetings, my nights mentoring young women in STEM through local programs. It wasn't about fame or money, it was about building a legacy that meant something, one that didn't carry the Murray name. Sometimes late at night I'd think about my family, not with anger, but with a strange kind of clarity. They'd shaped me not by their support, but by their absence. Every time they'd dismissed me, they'd pushed me to fight harder. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my team, my mission, and the lives we were changing. Seattle was my home now, not because of the city, but because of the space I'd carved out for myself. As I looked out over the skyline from my office, I knew this was just the beginning. It's been a year since I walked away from that dinner table in East Hampton, and I've learned more about family than I ever thought possible. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose. I used to think family was about blood, about shared names and shared wealth, but I was wrong. Family is the people who see you, who believe in you, even when you're not sure you believe in yourself. For me, that's Sally, my team at HealthSync, and the patients who write to us every day saying our work gave them a second chance. That's the legacy I'm building, one that's mine, not tied to anyone else's expectations. Looking back, I don't regret leaving. It wasn't just about escaping my parents' control or Courtney's constant need to one-up me. It was about realizing I didn't need their validation to know my worth. Every time they dismissed me, called my work a gamble, laughed at my dreams, they pushed me to fight harder. I built HealthSync from nothing, not because they supported me, but because they didn't. That's the irony. Their doubt became my fuel. It drove me to create something that's now saving lives across continents, from Seattle to Stockholm. I think about Aunt Esther often. She was the only one who saw me not as a disappointment or a rival, but as someone with something to offer. Her texts still come short and simple, always ending with "keep shining." I keep them in a folder on my phone, a reminder that one person's belief can be enough to carry you through. As for my parents and Courtney, I haven't heard from them in months. Their messages stopped after I ignored their attempts to reconnect. I don't know if they're angry or just embarrassed, and honestly, I don't care. I've let go of the need to fix them or prove them wrong. My energy is better spent elsewhere. HealthSync is growing faster than I ever imagined. We've expanded to 5 European countries with teams on the ground, training doctors and patients on our devices. Last month, we hit a milestone: 100,000 users worldwide. Every number represents a person, a parent, a kid, a teacher, who can live without the constant fear of a health crisis. That's what keeps me up at night, not anger toward my family. I'm working on a new project now, a device that could monitor multiple conditions at once. It's ambitious, but so was HealthSync when I started sketching it in my dorm room. To the girls out there dreaming of STEM, or anyone who feels like they're not enough, don't wait for someone to hand you permission. Your value isn't in what others think of you. It's in what you build, what you stand for. I spent years waiting for my family to see me to say I was good enough. That was time wasted. The moment I stopped chasing their approval, I started building my own path. You can too. Take that first step, whether it's learning to code, starting a project, or just believing you're capable. Don't let anyone's doubts, including your own, stop you from creating something real. I want to thank you for following this journey. Your support, your comments, your stories. They mean the world to me and my team. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're sharing more about HealthSync's mission, the tech behind it, and the people it's helping. Drop a comment below, tell me what you took away from this, or share your own story of proving someone wrong. I read every single one, and they inspire me to keep going. Let's build something bigger together. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the start of a new chapter. I don't know what's next, but I know I'm not looking back. If I can leave you with one thing, it's: this family is who believes in you. Don't wait for recognition. Build your own value. Now go out there and make it happen.